Hello, everybody, and welcome to Election Special 2024. We're sitting here at Blake Nakhan's house. I appreciate your hospitality here, Blake. Last time we did this, I ran it as a live stream on Facebook from the home of Jude Grow. Had a lot of fun doing it. So this year we're gonna do a recording. Blake's offered to do some recording, a little bit of editing. We got some Satsuma margaritas here. We are live. So we're going to talk about the 2024 election here between Democrat Kamala Harris and Republican Donald Trump. And obviously, a lot's changed since the 2020 election, but at the same time, we're looking at very similar demographic structures. We're looking at very similar vote shares among regions. There is a very, very small chance that the vote is going to go the same way as it did in 2020. We're looking at a couple of flips, mostly from Democrat to Republican, although Biden did put a little bit of cushion there that we're going to talk about. I think it would be best if we just talk about individual states whenever it gets to that. But first, I want to talk a little bit about polling. Same way as we did last time. I discussed some of the fundamentals around polling the last time we did this, but this time I want to talk a little bit more about what it means for this election cycle specifically and why the polls may not be as trustworthy as they once were. And this is something that a lot of people bring up about the polls being quote unquote fake, the polls being, people drawing up fake numbers for the purposes of political biases. What we're worried about here is not them just making up numbers out of thin air. What we're worried about is the practice of what's called herding, where people are so scared, pollsters are so scared to go away from the consensus that they end up tossing out poll results that are too much of outliers. So if the consensus is around, say, a Harris +2 state, and a pollster gets a number of Harris +7, they're likely to throw that poll out just to make sure that it gets thrown into the consensus and it's not seen as too much of an outlier. They also don't want to be that wrong to where if it goes, say, Trump +2 in the actual result, their poll of Harris +7 will look absolutely ridiculous. They'll get a bad rep as a pollster, yada, yada, yada. There are some pollsters that do not care about their reputation. They want to put out good polling. They want to put out good methodologies, good results that are consistent with what they actually found. And those pollsters deserve all the credit in the world for being willing to put themselves out there like that. But this practice of herding has called into question some of the aggregates, because what it does is it'll make the individual polls more accurate, but it'll make the aggregates less accurate over time. And it kind of throws a monkey wrench whenever you're trying to get a good idea of an average of polls. It throws a monkey wrench in that whole process, because if the outliers aren't included in there, say you've got a couple outliers, say you've got Harris +7, Harris +8, and Harris +6, when the consensus is around tied. Well, those three outlier polls aren't outliers when they're put together. They bring the average up toward Harris, right? So if enough people are doing the herding, you can really skew the numbers and throw the polls way off. So it's something to be aware of that's become more prevalent in this cycle than it was in past cycles. We don't know which side it favors because the polls aren't published. We don't know if there's any kind of bias being shown or anything like that. What we're pretty sure of is there aren't pollsters out there just making up numbers. They're posting methodologies, they're posting call logs, things like that. I mean, it's all the top pollsters are all open for audit. They all make themselves open for it. So it's really not. They publish their results. They publish their entire studies. There's really not too much potential for just making up numbers. I think we can do away with that concept. Important to note about polling too, we didn't really go into it last time, and I'll be glad to show something on the lines here. So say you have let's see if I can draw this out real quick. Republican. We'll do the Republican on the right and the Democrat on the left, like so, right? And so say you have a poll, a normal poll with a 95% confidence margin of error of 3 points. So we'll say this is 3, 6, 9, 6, 9. So let's visualize this real quick. So the poll finds that it's tied. The poll comes back even. It says the Democrat and the Republican are polling perfectly even. There's a margin of error of 3 points. The confidence interval is 95%. So if the confidence is 95%, what that means is ultimately there's a 95% probability that the actual result is going to be within 3 points of that poll, right? So we can be pretty sure with enough of a sample size that it'll be within 3 points on either side. Now, this may be a little hard to visualize, but in a case like 2016, where everybody said, oh, the polls were terrible, they were way off, they had Hillary Clinton winning, Donald Trump actually won. So we're back to our even spot, right? What you actually saw there were polls that looked like this. Where they had the same confidence interval, but they were slightly to the left. They had Hillary Clinton winning by a point, 2 points, right? So when it fell here, and Donald Trump ended up winning by a point, it looks like they were completely wrong. They had Hillary Clinton winning. That poll, the one that I'm showing you here, this hypothetical poll that's sort of the amalgamation of all the polls back then, this was right. This was a well done poll. It came within the margin of error that was defined by their confidence level. So it's something to keep in mind that whenever the races are this close, whenever you're talking about polls that show a Harris +1 or a Trump +2, and the margin of error is 3, that is a coin flip. That can go either way. And that's sort of the problem with this election as opposed to the last one. If you tuned into my 2020 election special, you saw that using just the polling figures, we would have gotten 48 out of 50 correct. I ended up getting 46 out of 50 because 2 of them I kind of went with my gut on, and I was wrong on both of them. The only 2 that I had gotten wrong, that polling had gotten wrong, was North Carolina and Georgia. Everything else we could tell from the polling how it was going to go. The polling was really well done in 2020 everywhere but the upper Midwest, the Rust Belt, the Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania areas all broke toward Trump, similar to the way they did in 2016, and the polls were off by a little more than they were in 2016. But the rest of the country, they got pretty well done. And we're going to talk a little bit about where in the country it looks like is going to be a close race and where it's going to be an absolute blowout, and we know that already. It's been sort of the same swing states for the last few election cycles, so you can pretty much imagine where it's going to be. But Arizona has become a battleground state. Nevada has become a battleground state. North Carolina has become a battleground state. And so I'm going to bring your attention to the board over here, and we'll talk a little bit about it. So right here, you can see we've got Pennsylvania, we've got Michigan, Wisconsin, we've got Arizona, Nevada, Georgia, and North Carolina. Those are the battlegrounds. I sort of made a little bit of an exception here to talk about Texas, Florida, New Hampshire, Minnesota, and Iowa because of some recent events that came out. And so we're going to talk a little bit about those. In fact, I'll go to those first and we can take a look at it. If you hadn't tuned into my first election special that I did 4 years ago, this is a website called 270 to Win. 270 to Win is a great interactive map that you can go on, and it does the electoral math for you. So it tells you how many points each state is worth, how many electoral votes each state has. I'm not going to go through the basics of the Electoral College again. It's something I did on the last special. I'd be glad to answer any questions about it in the comments, anything like that. But for this map, we're just going to assume that everyone knows how the Electoral College works, and we'll go from there. So first, I want to talk a little bit about Texas. So Texas right now, I have Trump is +7 in the polls. He's over 90% to win. You say, well, why the hell would we talk about Texas at all, right? So Texas has trended more and more blue each cycle. For the last 3 cycles. It used to be +20 Republican. It went to +15, +11, +8, all the way down to +4. Now they're polling. He's +7 now, Trump. So it looks like it's lurched a little bit back red. But the demographics are obviously turning toward blue in Texas, and Democrats do expect Texas to be in play within the next couple of election cycles. So it's something just to keep an eye on, that eventually Texas will be purple. It'll be a battleground state. And as you can see, it's worth 40 electoral votes. So it's a really, really big damn deal. Whenever Texas is purple, the entire focus is going to be on Texas, because 40 electoral votes, it could be more or less by the time it becomes purple, but it'll be around that number, and it's a lot. It's a big deal. It's worth more than twice as much as any of the battleground states that are currently in play. So for right now, we're going to keep it red because it is going to be red. Ted Cruz is running for Senate out there, and he might actually lose, but the presidency looks to be pretty sewn up for Trump in Texas. For Florida, kind of the same deal. Florida has swung red. We have, back in 2008 and 12, Obama carried Florida. So that it was a swing state. It was considered a swing state. But in the last two election cycles, it swung hard toward Trump, famously so in 2020, where a lot of the Cuban voters really carried, a lot of the Hispanic voters really carried Trump home. The only notable thing coming out of Florida right now, and I mean, Florida is Trump +6 right now, about a 90% chance to win. Not a whole lot of hope there for Democrats, but there was some recent national news, probably shouldn't have been national news, but somebody who spoke at one of Trump's rallies, a comedian by the name of Tony Hinchcliffe, insult comic, insulted Puerto Ricans as a whole. And so throughout the entire Hispanic community, there was kind of a sense of outrage over that. Don't know how much that's going to translate into votes, impossible to tell. But with a state such as Florida, where it depends so heavily on that vote, it's worth noting because Florida is within 6-7 points. So, I mean, it is possible that something major like that could swing it down to a small blue victory, but I'm really putting it kind of out of reach. We're going to leave it red for now. As you can see, just from those two states, Texas and Florida, I mean, that's 70 electoral votes together. The fact that Republicans carry those really makes it a competitive race. If Democrats carried either of those two, it wouldn't be competitive right now. It would have to be a wide change in electoral strategy for Republicans in order to keep up. And I'm not trying to say that Republicans are hanging on by a thread there, but with demographics trending the way they are in Texas, they really need to be careful about how they approach it, because right now it's a very close electoral map, and it's because they have 70 votes sewn up in Texas and Florida. Up in New Hampshire, and I don't have any notes on New Hampshire. It's just notable that it is lower than a 10-point lead for Harris. It looks safe this cycle, but New Hampshire remains a swing state. In 2020, it wasn't very close. In 2016, it was a lot closer. So we're going to mark it blue, but it is always a state to watch for. New Hampshire has always trended toward being a swing state. I left Minnesota in here, which a lot of people are going to laugh at because the governor of Minnesota is running for vice president now, and Minnesota's ran blue this entire century. It hasn't gone red. I don't even have it marked down. It's been so long since Minnesota's gone red, but since the election of 2000, at least to now, it's been blue. But with that said, it's closer than people would have it. Harris is only +6 in Minnesota. It's only about an 85 to 90% chance of victory. There is a small chance that that Trump comes up with the right polling with the right day. Excuse me. It's possible that Trump comes up and sneaks away with Minnesota. And I mean, if that happens, obviously we've got a whole different election than many of us are mapping out. I don't even know. Even my hardcore Republican friends don't have Trump winning Minnesota, but it is within the same striking distance as New Hampshire, so I wanted to include it there. Yeah, so for this one, we're going to leave it blue. All right. Moving on. The only other state that I included that is not one of the 7 famous battleground states is Iowa. And everybody knows why I'm including Iowa. Everyone who follows electoral politics and follows the news. Ann Seltzer, who is a remarkably accurate pollster out of Iowa, out of the Des Moines Register, recently put out a poll. And she had put out a poll a couple of months ago that had Trump up, I believe, 5. And she just put out a poll yesterday that crashed news sites and everything that had Harris +3. So completely unexpected result. For Harris to be +3 in Iowa with a margin of error of 3.5, that puts it with 95% confidence that Harris is going to win Iowa. And obviously, that's a brand new revelation that wasn't expected before. Many people are saying it's an outlier poll. Ann Seltzer even went on a talk show and said, that it's possible that this happens. That the 95% confidence is 19 and 20, so there's a 1 in 20 chance that we're way off base, and it's totally possible out of all the polls she's done. But with that said, it made people realize that Iowa may be in play. It may be something that none of us expected, and Iowa may be in play. I am going to be conservative about this and say Iowa's still going red because the electoral history in Iowa, the recent voting history, there's no reason to believe that it would suddenly lurch blue that hard, especially after being considered a Trump plus 10 state. So, but it is something definitely to keep an eye on. It's only worth 6 electoral votes. It's not going to change that much in the general outlook of things, but still worth it to take a look at Iowa after the election and see what it looked like there. But it looked like from her crosstabs that women and independents were breaking hard for Harris. So that leaves us with the 7 battleground states that everyone knows about. And it's worth mentioning that in a normal election year, there would be a whole range of margins, right? So there would be a whole range of different margins that people are winning or losing a state by 2 points, 3 points, 5 points, 8 points, 6 points. Be all over the place. There are some states that are really, really close, some states that are somewhat close and in play, and then some states that are out of play. What you're looking at here are 43 states in DC that are mostly out of play. Even the ones that I just went over, the New Hampshires, the Iowas, the Minnesotas, is 6 points. We're talking about 6 points when polls have a margin of error of 3. You're not looking at close races in any of these states, really. Even the ones that are theoretically winnable, like the Minnesota, the Iowa, New Hampshire, it's just not close. It's very, very, very small chance that it goes the other way. But these 7 battleground states are all within 2.5 points, which is, as far as I know, unprecedented to have that many within 2.5 points. What you're talking about is 7 coin flip states that if anyone is on TV saying they know who's going to win these states, or if anyone is on the internet saying they know who's going to win these states, they're wrong. They don't know, because even the best pollsters have them within the margin of error. All we can do is look at electoral history. We can look at demographic trends, and we can look at the polls we do have and any momentum that's carried. I think momentum's a big thing in electoral politics. I based a lot of my 2020 prediction on momentum, polling momentum that each candidate was carrying into the election. And so we're going to take a look at that today and just see what sense we can make of each of these battleground states and try to come to a conclusion. But in the end, it's important to note, and I really wanted to, and I don't want to look at this as a hedge, not really a hedge, more of just a disclaimer, really, that all 7 of these states are within the margin of error. That means there are 128 possible combinations of these states where it goes either red or blue, each one. Of those 128, there are a few that I've pegged as likely, whether it be because of demographical regions, whether it be because of electoral history, whatever it may be. Some of them are a little more likely than others, but really it could be any one of the 128 scenarios. So it's important to note that. 3 of those scenarios are ties, which makes things all the more fun. We're going to talk a little bit about that. But let's get into the states. Let's do them one by one. All right. So we're going to talk about the 7 battleground states. And as you can see, with the states that we know, and I'm putting "know" in quotes because, you never really know. There are some states that are still, like we said, in play. It is possible for Harris to win Florida. It's possible for her to win Iowa. It's possible for her to win Ohio, Alaska. There are some states that are not completely outside the realm of possibility. It's also a possibility that Trump wins New Mexico, Minnesota, New Hampshire. There are a few states in play. There are some states that are completely out of play. Kamala Harris is not going to win Louisiana. She's not going to win Utah. She's not going to win Montana. And Donald Trump's not going to win California. He's not going to win New York or Vermont. But there are some states that that we absolutely have no clue who's going to win. And those are the 7 right here. And when I say they have no clue, what I really mean is they're within the margin of error of polling. The aggregates of polling are within that 3 points that we really don't know. Arizona is the closest to a known of these 7, and Arizona's for Donald Trump by 2.5 points right now. So Arizona, as everyone knows, voted for Joe Biden in 2020. It was the first time that Arizona had gone blue since the 2000 election, since before the 2000 election. It's been red every other election this century. And so Arizona has the latest is an Atlas Intel poll showing Trump +7. Harris really has nothing going for her in Arizona, but the polls have always been close. They've always been for Trump, but always close, always in that 1 to 4 range. Early in the cycle, there were a few right after Harris became the nominee, and also right after the debate with Trump, there were a few polls that had Harris +1, but it swung back toward Trump pretty heavily. I think we can pretty safely, of the 7 battlegrounds, it's the closest thing to a safe bet is to call Arizona for Trump. I think it's going back red, and I don't think Harris has too much to play with in Arizona. Could be wrong. It is still within the margin of error. It could easily be Harris, another squeaker for the blue team, but it looks like it's going Trump. So the next state after that would be Nevada. Nevada's gone blue the last 4 election cycles. It hasn't gone red since Bush versus Kerry. But latest trends in polling show Nevada firmly within the Trump camp. Atlas Intel had a Trump +5. Emerson College did put out a Harris +1, and that's a good poll. They had a Harris +1 not long ago, and it's been blue for 4 straight cycles. They've already rejected Trump twice. Makes you think there's a pretty good possibility Nevada will be blue. But with the polling that we do have, what we do know out of Nevada, it looks like it's going red. I'm going to leave it red for my prediction, so to speak. North Carolina. North Carolina is a tough one to call. It's only gone blue once since 2000, which is kind of surprising because it's always sort of seen as a battleground state. It went blue for Obama in 2008, running against John McCain. And other than that, it's been red every election in the Bush era forward. So North Carolina is showing Trump +2 right now. I'm going to, well, let me just say, Atlas Intel actually conducted 3 polls in North Carolina. They have Trump +4, Trump +3, and Harris +1. So everything's within the margin of error. Tough state to call. But what we do have shows that on the aggregate, Trump is up a couple points. We're going to leave it Trump. We're going to say Trump's going to win North Carolina. And as you can see, from there, Republicans are already at 252. So all they need from here, if they win North Carolina and Arizona and Nevada and everything else goes as expected, all they need from there is Pennsylvania to get over 270. All they would need is Pennsylvania. So even if Harris were to win Georgia, Michigan, and Wisconsin, still not enough. Harris is still sitting at 267. It would come down to Pennsylvania. And as I think you're going to see with these scenarios that we put out here, a lot comes down to Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is by far the most important state in this election. It really comes down to Pennsylvania in a lot of scenarios, and definitely the combination of Pennsylvania and Georgia. If either candidate, and I had said this a couple months ago in one of my posts on Facebook early in the cycle, but if anyone carries both Pennsylvania and Georgia, it will be almost impossible for the other side to win. So here, I'm going to go to Wisconsin next. Talking about Wisconsin, very, very close race. The second closest race in the country behind Nevada right now. It has Harris up 0.6 points, so less than a point. It's only 56% or so to Harris. The latest Atlas Intel poll was even. And so it really suggests a toss-up. All polling suggests a toss-up in Wisconsin and also in Michigan. It's almost the exact same scenario. Harris is up 1 point per aggregate, 58% chance of winning. Atlas Intel had a Trump +1 as their last poll. So we're really talking about complete toss-ups. Everything within the margin of error. No real outlier polls have been posted. But this is the region I was talking about in my intro whenever I said susceptible to herding. We saw in the last couple of elections how off pollsters were in Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. There's also the chance, and my good friend Ross Tullis brings this up often, is that every time they're wrong in these elections, in 2016, they were wrong in this region. They made adjustments to their methodology. They made adjustments to their weighting methods, everything like that. The next election, they were off even more. They are going to overcompensate at some point, and there will be a polling error in the Democrats' favor. Whether that is this election cycle, next, at some point, there will be a polling error in the upper Midwest in Democrats' favor because of overcompensation on weighting. And so, if that is this election cycle, Harris is going to win these states in a blowout because they're already showing her slightly leading. If it's not this election cycle, if they are wrong, the same way they were wrong in 2016, the same way they were wrong in 2020, Trump will win these three states in a blowout. And so those things, you can look at them as equally likely. You can sort of weigh them in your mind, what goes better. Um, I can't do either of those things because it's pure guesswork. Even though it seems that a lot of what we're looking at is pure guesswork because everything's within the margin of error, going off of the aggregates, going off of the polling momentum, I think Kamala Harris is going to carry the entire blue wall. I think she's going to come down with all three of those states going blue. And also Georgia, as you can see, we're at 270. She doesn't need Georgia. If Trump were to win Georgia, it would be the closest election ever. 270 to 268, it would be the closest election ever. But I think there's good reason to believe that Kamala Harris is going to win Georgia as well. Georgia was a red state until the last election when Biden carried it by a very small margin. But it's been more and more blue for 3 cycles now. You can see it start to, and I'll bring up 538 just to show you guys here. If you look at Georgia's electoral history, you see it go way out red in 2004, 58% of the vote. And then it came way in for Obama, went a little more toward Romney, but then came up for Hillary Clinton and came way up into the winning margin for Joe Biden. So you can see that Georgia's ready to go blue, ready to be a blue state, you could say. Black women delivered the election for Joe Biden in Georgia in 2020. And so with a black woman running for president, obviously, I think there will be the same sort of turnout there. I think Georgia's going to go blue as well. And so I'm here putting myself out there with this prediction that will probably be wrong in some way, shape, or form. But I think Kamala Harris is going to be the next president with an electoral vote of 286 to 252. Notable for a few reasons. There's only been 3 elections in the last 100 years that had the winner having less than 300 electoral votes. 2000, 2004, and 1972, was it? 76, Jimmy Carter. Carter in 76 and then Bush in 2000 and 2004 were the only elections in the last 100 years where the winner had fewer than 300 electoral votes. And that's what I think is going to happen on this. We want to talk about ceilings real quick. I think it's important to know. So if we bring these states back out, say the 7 battlegrounds, let's say that pollsters are completely wrong, that we've got everything all messed up. Harris's momentum is completely illusion, and Donald Trump has a movement behind him that is sweeping the country, and he'll get back in office with the biggest blowout possible for him. So if they were all to go, all 7 battleground states were to go Trump, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia. Say he also flips Minnesota, which is, you could say, is in play. New Hampshire is in play. Possibly New Mexico, but I've seen no real reason to say New Mexico is in play. We'll leave it at this. We're going to say Trump's complete ceiling, his absolute ceiling, is 326, which is a lot. 326 is definitely a blowout. It's 22 more than he had against Hillary Clinton. It's 20 more than Joe Biden had against him. That's a blowout. Now, if we take all that out and we flip all 7 battlegrounds to Harris, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, and let's say Harris also wins Iowa, as hinted in that the Seltzer poll, and wins Florida. You can see that Harris can get up as high as 355. I don't see any of these other states being in play. Some people will say Texas is in play. I haven't seen any reason to believe that it is just yet. Next election cycle, it will definitely get a lot of talk around it. Harris did do a recent campaign event in Houston, which was surprising, but I think that has more to do with the fact that Ted Cruz is neck and neck with Colin Allred in their Senate race, and she was taking a day to do that. And there was a possibility, I know, that she was going to go on the Rogan podcast, and that fell apart. So that was I'm going to leave Texas red for that reason. So you could say, I would think that Harris's absolute ceiling is 355. I don't think she can get any higher than that. I don't think she's going to approach that. In reality, Florida is going Trump. I believe Nevada and Arizona are both going Trump. And I think North Carolina is leaning Trump big time. And so we are, and I'm leaving out Iowa here. I think this is what we're looking at, 286 electoral votes for Kamala Harris, and I think she will win. There are some scenarios here that very easily flip it to Donald Trump. You could have the exact same scenario that I'm positing here and just flip Pennsylvania. And look what happens. Donald Trump wins. I mean, and this could be a difference of 100,000 votes. That's the difference between this map and a win for Kamala Harris and this map and a win for Donald Trump. It could be that simple. Just one little string of votes in Pennsylvania that flips it. Georgia is not enough, though. And if she carries the blue wall of Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, there is not much Donald Trump can do to stop her, because the other 4 battleground states here in this scenario are all won by Trump, and it's not enough. It leaves them at 268, one shy of what's needed to tie. Now, there are 3 tie scenarios, and I think it's worth it just to talk about them. They are unlikely for a few reasons, and I'll show you why. But they do exist. And a tie is handled a little bit differently, where each state gets one single vote. And right now, those state delegations favor Donald Trump. So if there is a tie, Donald Trump would win, assuming there's no sort of faithless elector scenario. And so the tie, you can see here, 270 to win gives this cool little feature where it actually shows from the 7 battleground states, there are 21 scenarios favoring Republicans, 20 favoring Democrats, and 3 ties. So let's go into those 3 ties. And you can see they show you the combinations necessary for a tie here. All 3 of them involve Trump winning Pennsylvania and Michigan, which are both within the realm of possibility. And they show Harris winning Arizona, which is, again, Arizona of the 7 battleground states is the least likely to be a toss-up. It's leaning more Trump than any of the other states. And so other than those 3, you see kind of a mismatch. Like one of them has Trump winning Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Nevada, while Harris wins Georgia, North Carolina, Arizona. That results in a 269 to 269 tie, which would be absolute bedlam, but it would end in a House vote that Donald Trump would win because of the current layout. So those 3 scenarios do favor Republicans. So because of that, you could say that 24 scenarios, 24 of the possible combinations here end in Republicans winning, and 20 end in Democrats winning. And so that's really all I had for you guys. I really appreciate you tuning in. Would love to read any comments you may have, any predictions you may have from there. Let me just put it out one more time, just so that everybody can get a nice little screenshot for when I'm wrong. And Blake can rub it in my face for a while. But here's what I think it's going to look like. So from there, best of luck. I hope you all vote, and I hope I know everybody can't get the outcome they want, but I hope you have a good election day, and talk to you all soon.